declare a quorum.
Thank you, Dr. Benavides. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Sines. We're gathered this afternoon for budget work session number 4, but before we do that, we have public comments. Is there anyone signed up for public comments?
We don't have any public comments.
Okay. Then we'll move on to item number 5, which is budget work session number 4, and we'll start with property values.
If we could, board, we would like to do item number 7 because there's a previous commitment that Ms. Zapata has, and we would like to do item number 7, if that's okay.
Not a problem. We'll move to item number 7, discussion on corrective action plan to improve procedures regarding purchasing and acquisitions.
Good afternoon, Dr. Benavides, School Board of Trustees, Dr. Science, Assistant Superintendents, and members of the audience. This afternoon, we will be covering with you the corrective action plan to improve procedures regarding purchasing and acquisition.
So if we could have everyone turn in there, it's in the binder after page 30. That's where you'll find the
presentation looks like this.
Got it.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
so after the school board meeting that was, or work session rather, that was held on April 20th, the Procurement Policies and Procedures Advisory Committee met a couple of times to go over the comments that were provided by our school board of trustees and to develop further recommendations based on the school board's comments. So on page 4 is where we have the current policy regarding CH local, which currently is at $50,000. During the prior work session, our Board of Trustees expressed their desire to bring down that threshold to $25,000. There was no mention of the exempted categories, so administration assumes that the categories that are currently listed in CH local will remain as such. So next was a rotation of vendors. And we spoke about the possibility of rotating vendors, especially in facilities maintenance and transportation. Then developing consequences for purchases deliberately processed under the school board approval procurement threshold, which relates to accountability. So the Purchasing Advisories Committee recommendation will, our committee agreed with the board about your sentiment in bringing down that threshold to $25,000. On the following page, nonetheless, we conducted a study just to see where we landed in regards to other school districts of comparable size in the Rio Grande Valley. And we listed 11 other school districts. Well, there's 10. From items 1 through 10, you can see Brownsville, Donna, Edinburgh, Harlingen, Laredo, McAllen, Mission PSJA, Rio Grande City, and Sharyland ISD all have their threshold at $50,000. Wesco, which is smaller than us, they have it at $25,000. And so we just wanted to show the board a comparison. Nonetheless, the committee understands the board's intention in bringing down that threshold to $25,000, and we will move forward with that.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Of course, following school board policy, local policy revision, which we will work hand in hand with Ms. Ayala's department.
Yes, because I was going to make the comment that even though those districts have a 50,000 threshold, they do not have the problems that we have.
Then, secondly, as far as rotating the vendors, absolutely, especially in facilities and transportation. And we will examine other areas that may lend themselves to that rotation as well. As far as the consequences, for those departments that deliberately process agenda items under the threshold, that will be an item that will be very difficult for administration to prove. We certainly do not want to accuse any administrator of deliberately circumventing policy. Nonetheless, we'll keep an eye as much as we possibly can to avoid patterns of that sort. As far as on slide number 7, the bid process, on that one, the board had no comments. However, we will apply the $25,000 threshold to the evaluation committee as well. So on any procurement items that we approve that may be exempt, meaning there are those exemptions on CH local policy, we will still require an evaluation committee comprised of a minimum of 3 administrators, one which will be from an administrator outside of that department, to take part in the evaluation of that procurement. So we wanted to highlight that to our board. On slide number 8, this is the slide addressing the establishment of the Code of Silence. We have, and we go on to the next slide, where our school board indicating that it was necessary for us not just to have a code of silence, but also to establish consequences for violations, whether they be from vendors, employees, or school board members. So if you refer to Appendix A, which is after page 20, we have a draft that we have already forwarded to our contact administrator in human resources and to TASB as well. We developed this one from another school district whose policy was very well written, and we modified it to meet our district needs. So it's under current review by TASB. This morning, one of their attorneys contacted me and advised that the attorney that will be assigned to this policy will be returning on Thursday. So once that attorney returns, we will have more in-depth dialogue regarding the Code of Silence, and we'll be bringing that back to you. As far as enforcement as well, we will have a Code of Silence acknowledgement form that will be signed annually by our School Board of Trustees, administration, and campus principals, whereby we will provide enhanced training regarding the intent of the Code of Silence, the actual process, and the consequences as well. So we will be having training on that. Of course, once our school board adopts it into policy. Not only will the Code of Silence be invoked for regular procurement, but we will also use the Code of Silence for all procurement over $25,000, even in those categories that are exempted from coming to the school board for approval. So we will apply that across the board. On the next page, we have CAA local policy, and this is the one that was recommended by the external auditor, where the school board would provide administration an opportunity with advance notice when their intent is not to take action on an item, or if there is the potential of postponement. So this is also one that is currently under review by TASB. We reached out to our contact with TASB today because my conversation this morning with the attorney was specifically on the Code of Silence. He was unaware of the CAA local policy edition as well. So we have been informed that a TESB attorney will be reaching out to us regarding the language. They don't have another school district that they are aware of that has this type of procedure in place in policy, so they advise that it could be regulation potentially instead of actual local policy. So again, we will bring that back to you once the TESB attorneys help us draft language.
Say that again, Sylvia, that they will.
Okay, so on this one, TESB advised that they don't have another school district to be used as a sample. So for example, the Code of Silence, there are a number of school districts throughout the state that have one in place. Whereas with this type of procedure that the external auditor recommended, they don't have sample language or another school district that can be used as a sample. So the recommendation that was given this morning unofficially is that more than likely it will be included as school board regulation and not school board local policy.
And what
Can
was
you
the
just
external,
yes,
what
can you
was the
just
external
explain?
auditor's recommendation, if you can refresh my memory?
Yes, so on page 10, we have the recommendation from the external auditor where he said that if the board intends to postpone an item, that the board should allow administration advance notice of the intent and afford administration an opportunity to provide an explanation such as detailing the rationale, the recommendation, what repercussions that there would be if the board elects not to take action.
I don't feel comfortable with that because that means that we would be discussing that at length before an officially called board meeting. And I know that, of course, takes 4 for a quorum, but still, this type of action kind of forces you to talk about it, right, Jerry?
It would certainly pose a threat of doing that. It would lend itself to administrative forum if they discuss an item outside of the board meeting.
Yes, that's why I'm like, I'm not sure that
And if I might add, the external auditor's recommendation was that we did not have a procedure in place to act if a board denies or does not approve an agenda item. What do we do when the board does not deny it? During our talks and so forth, there was could we, during our committee meeting, could we go in and ask the board, give us an opportunity for you saying, you know what, we have questions on this agenda item, give us an opportunity, we may not approve it, clarify any questions before action. So that way we can.
But even in committees, sometimes we say one thing and then we come out and do another thing. So that's unfair on the administration too.
I'm wondering if it could be as simple as putting in regulation what our board has done in the past. When there is an item that is not approved, they either postpone and ask for more information, or they vote to not approve. And so, but we do not have that in regulation either.
Correct.
So I'm wondering if it could be just that, to put in writing that is allowed to postpone an item based on more information that the board may want. Because that is what our board has done in the past.
I just feel that it's going to encourage a lot of discussion outside of an officially called board meeting, and I don't feel comfortable with that.
Well, because the only way that, you're right, the only way that we would give advance notice to administration is because we've discussed it and are thinking of postponing, right? That's how we would know.
I don't know, I just think that it encourages it, and I don't feel comfortable.
Okay, this is an item that we could probably go back to the committee and discuss in more detail. Then it might be just a mere saying, if the board postpones it, what are we going to do after that? Do we?
Which is what Dr. Saenz is saying, maybe because we don't have that outlined, because that would,
to postpone it
as
means
it is,
comes
we
back.
get accused of discussing and knowing.
Table, it does not come back.
Maybe we could we could get assistance from TASB on outlining possible board outcomes when the motion is on the floor.
Okay, sounds good.
Yes, is that
Yes.
okay?
Yes, Dr. Sanz, absolutely.
We'll review this one.
Okay, so as we progress to page 11, there we highlighted in the second bullet point at the bottom, the fact that all procurements at 25,000 and above will require an evaluation committee. The next slide, page 12, there's no change there. On page 13, there's no change there. On page 14, this is where our school board asked that we provide methods to monitor how administration would ensure that teachers would not be held responsible to process quotations and how this would be enforced. So the recommendation from the committee is that campus principals, department heads, and secretaries will sign an acknowledgement form through the conflicts disclosure and purchasing standards of conduct compliance certification document. We have that document in place. So now there would be a statement there prohibiting the individuals that sign that document, the principals, department heads, and secretaries, from assigning quotation process responsibilities for teachers. Now, as far as monitoring that, administration would make periodic announcements in principals' meetings, central office administrators' meetings, and of course through the acknowledgement of that form. It was discussed that if we were to process a survey, for example, it would be very uncomfortable for a teacher to say, my principal is making me process quotes, because that might affect their working relationship. So the committee recommends that we periodically monitor by reminding the principals and the department heads that they shouldn't be assigning those duties to their teachers. Are there, okay, so then.
Maybe that's, I'm sorry, maybe
Go
that's.
ahead, Dr. Benavides.
Maybe that's another thing that could be listed as a regulation, an administrative guideline, instead of just reminding them, because we do a lot of reminding, but it still happens. So I think that it has to be stronger than that.
Okay, so they will be signing that acknowledgement form. They will be signing that acknowledgement form indicating that they are not to delegate quotation process responsibilities to their teachers. So we will include that in our purchasing procedures.
Yeah,
now, if the teachers are put in that predicament, they can contact me and let me know, so we can include that in our procedures. They can contact me or the chief financial officer and let us know on the basis of anonymity. I can never say it correctly, anonymity. And we can protect their identity that way. But we're afraid that if we process a survey, it may create animosity.
No, I'm not thinking about a survey. I'm just
Okay.
thinking that it's an administrative guideline.
Okay, we'll do that. On slide number 15, there were no comments by our board. And then we move on to the job order contracts. And on those, our board's comments were to eliminate job order contracts because of the concern that someone could call someone else to give them a job. And so it was recommended that we establish a plan with options. So perhaps a work session to explain how the job order contract process works and what other options there are. What also the board indicated their desire to know what other procurement methods are used throughout the state and what best practices can be implemented. So we are in the process of contracting with an attorney that will be coming in that's very specialized with construction and job order contracts. And so we are in the process of contracting with that attorney. So she can come in and conduct a work session to our school board on site in person. And that will be later this month. Okay, then we go to page 20. And so this is the recommendation from our Board of Trustees, or the comments, I should say, about providing a list of resources and staff to accomplish those changes. So in evaluating the changes that are to take place with the procurement enhancements being recommended, the following are the resources that we're recommending. 1 assistant director of purchasing, 2 purchasing buyers, 1 contract specialist, 2 purchasing specialists, and of course, an area for them to work in, as well as the computer hardware, software, and furniture. And after that slide, we have the appendix for the Code of Silence. So at this time, if there are any other questions or comments by our school board, we'll be more than glad to address them.
The only thing that, on those recommendations, it would be good to see what administrators we have on hand that have background in business and degrees in business that could help, so that it's not additional positions, because I don't want us talking out of both ends of our mouth. Since we said we're going to hold off on opening new positions, that we look at that first. But I know that I also committed to providing the support necessary to improve this area. But first, looking to see if there is anyone with business backgrounds, masters in business, that could help in these areas.
Within the school district, Dr.
Within
Benavides?
the school district, yes. And then the other one, and maybe I'm not recalling correctly, but I think one of our board members mentioned, and I'm not sure in which committee, but that instead of it being just 1 outside person, that there be 2. Did I dream that, or did you all say?
No, that somebody did
Okay.
make that recommendation.
Okay, so I
do
noticed
recall.
that it was, in all the committees, it's still 1 outside.
Okay.
And I think we had agreed at that time that we were going to have 2.
Yes.
Okay, I missed that.
And
Okay.
we'll
My apologies, I
make
missed
that adjustment.
Okay,
Yeah.
now, so we have clarification. The 2 administrators outside of the department, will that be for all procurement over 25,000, or for those coming before our school board for approval?
I think that coming for the school board for approval, I think that's what
Okay.
we meant.
Okay.
But, I mean, yeah, I don't know, I don't want to speak for everyone.
So if it's procurement over 25 from the exempt categories, we can say 1 administrator outside of the department, and there will always be a minimum of 3 members. Okay, 1 of them being from outside the department. Now, for those agenda items coming before our school board, can it still be the 3 as long as 2 are from outside the department?
Yes.
Okay. I misunderstood that. My apologies. I'll make a revision on that.
We just felt that if it's just 1, they can be outnumbered.
Okay.
So if there's 2 and they're all from outside the department, then they have, their recommendation to make, and then they're, rather than just 1.
Okay. And just to reiterate on that.
But it's not always going to be the same person.
No, and that's what I'm going to explain.
That's our
Yes,
next
and I
point,
started.
and it's not listed here.
No.
That they would be different people for each purchase
Right.
over 25,000.
Yeah, in a prior work session, we indicated that each one of the assistant superintendents will be recommending a minimum of 5 administrators. And those departments that have additional administrators, if they're able to recommend more than the 5, then we encourage that.
And then you're going to rotate them from
And
there.
then, yes, we will rotate them, and we will assign them from purchasing.
I was thinking.
We will do that at our level, so this way, the administrator in that department, will not be biased to anyone. And I can even do it, if it's the board's desire, we can even do it through casting of lots, the way we do the tie bids.
Yeah, that's good. The other thing that I was thinking, and I know a lot of my staff never liked it when I would say I was thinking, because heaven knows what I would come up with, but I was thinking that in the rotation for transportation and for those services, that we, the board, be given an opportunity to become familiar with, let's say, who are the vendors that transportation has, so that we know, like we're aware that there is a rotation happening, because
Yes.
we've talked about a rotation, we've recommended that, we've said that we want to help our local people and that we want them rotated, but the bottom line figures don't show that we're rotating.
Okay.
So if we're familiar with, I'm just using transportation as an example, but if we're familiar with those and we say, oh, well, Sylvia Zapata, Alta Benavides, whatever, okay, well then they're being rotated, rather than being told they're being rotated, and then at the end of a project year, they were not rotated. And it becomes obvious at that time, and it's a little bit too late. That's another thing that we discussed.
Dr. Benavides, we requested a brand new report from our computer services department. In fact, I received it today. And we have the ability to select vendors by threshold. We can even tweak it to where we can do it by commodity. So for example, for transportation, I'm pretty sure that report can be modified to where you can actually see by date, by month, and a month to month, or from say July, the beginning of the fiscal year to now, how many purchase orders were approved per vendor, and you'll be able to see that in black and white. So we have a tool. All the awarded vendors are actually listed on our purchasing department webpage under transportation. It's called Automotive Bus Specialized Repair Services. So we have the list of all the vendors that are awarded there. So we can provide the board with a copy of that together with a report where you can even see the dates, the PO numbers, the vendors, and the amounts that were approved and paid to those vendors. So we have the data. We just need to customize a report like the one I received today to provide us with exactly what you're asking for.
The same thing with maintenance, because I know that certain vendors get called
Yes.
more often to do work. And I know I haven't asked for that in an open records, but I'm sure if we did, the same pattern is going to be seen, where some,
Yes.
we can be told that they're being rotated, but in essence, they're not, and it's only the same ones getting the work.
We can generate the same report for that.
And I know that the transportation has started doing some of the rotation. They never did in the past, but I think the past 2 years, they have been rotating. But like I said, we're not keeping track, but they have started. They never did in the past, but they have started.
So to fulfill the board's request on that one, to make sure that the vendors are being rotated, would a report of the purchase orders that were approved within the previous month be suffice? That way you would see these are the vendors who we're buying from? Mm-hmm. Is that something that would suffice, similar to what Sylvia said?
Mm-hmm. We can provide a report for the previous month, and we can provide a cumulative report to where you can see, okay, this past month, these vendors received these purchase orders. Mm-hmm. And if you want to see year to date, you're not only going to see the previous month, but you're also going to see from July to the present. So we can provide both reports.
And that's an agenda item that can be included in our committee meetings, and we can just it can become just a way of life, to where we review that and we see which ones have been used and where we are with that, and then we can.
And we'll follow up with Mr. Gonzalez as well, so we can assist him with any procurement guidance he might need. Are there any other questions or comments?
Board of Trustees I know Sylvia went over only the items where you had made recommendations for changes. Are there any other items that we did not discuss this time because you were okay with them, that you would want for her to review?
Thank you, Ms. Zapata.
At a future board meeting, I'm sure we're going to look at the whole thing all over again.
Yes.
Because right now we may not remember some of the things, and maybe we didn't bring it up and we may think of something else, but we are going to see it all together, right? Like the ones that we didn't.
Yes.
Working document.
Yeah, the one that we didn't make changes to, and these that we've made changes to.
We could bring it back at the next work session. That's why I asked if there was any other questions on the other ones, because I had thought of possibly putting it on the May 11th agenda, but we can delay it and we can look at it at the work session that I think we have for the
May 18th.
the May 18th.
Well, we can put it, discussion for the May 11th, and then
Maybe do a discussion item where we present the whole thing and then an action item.
We'll be pending
Things right.
the work session from the 18th.
we'll work with the dates. We'll work with the
Yes,
dates
okay.
so that we can
Okay.
get an opportunity to review it, but at the same
Yes.
time, get it approved.
Yes. Thank you.
We want to make sure that the board is okay with the exemptions on page 4, so that can be part of your review as well. I had a call from one of the administrators earlier this afternoon asking whether the revamping of procedures was going to impact the categories that are listed. And I told him that we, at this point, do not have any modifications. The board has not expressed any changes to the exempt categories. And so he just wanted the assurance that we were going to be okay. The call was specifically alluding to child nutrition services food. And so, and how that would impact if we were to bring every purchase over $25,000 before the board, because those are part of the exempt category. So we just want to make sure that we're totally transparent, that the board is still okay with those exempted categories.
So those are the ones listed here.
Yes,
The
Dr.
purchase of
Benavides.
child nutrition services, food, related paper and plastic products, utilities, consumer, personal protective equipment, and the central warehouse inventory, custodial, instructional, and office supplies, paper, so forth. All those are the ones that
Yes.
they're going to be exempt.
Yes, and any classroom instructional resource and technology. So in those, in the instructional resource and technology, we could be talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, okay? So we just want to make sure that our board recognizes these categories. This is what's in policy right now. It has certainly contributed to the efficiency of processing these orders, but we just want to make sure that if our board was to be asked, okay, you are aware of those exempt categories, that you are reminded that we have them in place.
I would have a concern with the computer hardware, only because I know we got certain amount of ESSER funds, and I also know that the lifespan of a lot of our modern technology is short-lived. And so I know we've been purchasing, and I'm concerned about having to replace a lot of those devices, and and not having the money because the ESSER money is going to run out. And so I have a concern including computer hardware, bottom line.
We
Okay.
can, yeah, we can relook at all the categories and we can adjust our policy based on
Yes.
concerns that you might have on
Now-
any of the categories.
Dr. Science and Dr. B, we have an annual quotation solicitation that our department processes in coordination with Ms. Clem and her administrative team. And these are the most commonly used pieces of hardware, which is the student desktop, the teacher laptop, the administrative desktop, the Chromebooks, etc. So we process a quotation usually in September. It goes in effect, I want to say it expires October 31st. It goes in effect November 1st through the following October 31st. And so in the past, prior to this exempt category, we would come before our school board, and then every time we had a purchase over 50,000, we would bring it before our school board for approval. When we included these categories, then we stopped doing that. We would still purchase those items as previously school board approved, but we wouldn't bring every purchase over 50,000 to the school board. So if it's computer hardware, regardless of whether we purchase it through that quotation or not, am I understanding that the board would like to see all computer hardware? iPads, Chromebooks, laptops, desktops?
I'm just concerned because I'm sure that the pandemic taught us a lot about
Yes.
which devices we need to be investing in, because we don't know the future.
Correct.
And we need to be prepared. And so I'm just wondering, I would like to know, like, what did we learn? What did we learn from it? Which were the most popular devices? Which are the ones that we need to be on the lookout for? Which are the ones that we need to plan to replace? Because if something were to happen again, these are the ones we need to have. And so those kind of things. So I don't know, maybe it's more work for it to be brought, but I would like to be aware. That's just me. I don't know how the
And perhaps that
I
may-
think we need to bring Ms. Clem Garza
Yeah, I
so
was-
she can
Yes.
debrief with us, because she's the expert,
Absolutely.
and support her and her needs. And then we
Yes.
take the next steps.
Yes, and that's what I was going to suggest as well, having Ms. Clem conduct a presentation, and perhaps with her covering it, then the board can provide guidance as to whether we should keep that category in CH local or remove it. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions, this concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Zapata.
Thank you. Okay, since we covered item number 7, I think we can go back to item, thank you again, Mrs. Zapata. So let's go to item number 5, budget work session number 4, which is property values.
Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. In your binder, if you would turn over to this next page that is labeled property values, and then we move on to page number 3. Property values were provided to us, it's on page 3. Property values were provided to us by the appraisal district, I believe, about a week or so ago. And so here we, as part of the requirement for our first report, we need to discuss property values with you. And they are important to us, to the district, because that is where we base our tax rate and how much tax levy we will be generating. Okay, this is a history for the last 5 years. We start with the, fiscal year 2018-2019, and that's tax year 2018. We started with $2.5 billion. Our tax rate at that point was $1.17. The INS rate was 0.1410, and for a total tax rate of $1.3110. Our total levy for that year was $32,996. Let me remind you that the tax levy here incorporates a tax of frozen levies. So if you do the calculation there, it's not going to tie to that because some of those property values are frozen. Okay. If we go on, if you see from 18-19, we had a 2.78 increase. For 19-20, it's a 5.2. Last year in tax year 21, the district did see a large increase in property values, 14.35 increase from the previous year. Basically, like we mentioned before, this was accounted because the appraisal district did a complete audit of the LJISD boundaries and realized that there was a lot of development that was being done and they had not performed that, so they did that. So we saw a huge increase, 14% increase in property values. For this year, the preliminary values that we got from them is at $3.3 billion. And that is a 4.89% increase from the previous years. It's still high. This number will be evaluated constantly because the appraisal district will start reviewing the property, disputes from taxpayers. So that number is going to change. And so we'll be monitoring that to be able to determine what our tax levy would be. Based on that $3.3 billion preliminary tax rate, we anticipate collecting a tax levy of $40 million, $40,620,000, and is with that being at a total tax rate of $1.27, of which the .9746 is for MNO tax rate and .2954 in the INS rate. If you see the INS rate is slightly higher, and that we increased it just to be able to generate enough monies for the district to meet the debt service payments that are required to be made on a yearly basis. Of course, these are preliminary numbers. We'll be monitoring these, and as they fluctuate because of the appraisal district adjusting their property values, then we would be looking at that number very closely. Okay. Any questions on this? Okay, the next item on the agenda is revenue projections. Yes.
I'm just curious. On 2021 or 20, it was just 5.2, and it's 35 million, the levy. Explain that. And the other one that was 14%, 14.35%, it was 38. So it's only like 3 million?
Yes.
Explain that.
The difference in those, part of it, and you're talking about the tax levy.
Yes, the levy.
Because if you see the tax levy for M&O in 2021 school year was $1.683, and for the 21-22 went down to .9920.
That's the difference. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Thank you.
If you turn on to page 5, this is not new information. It's something that we've shared with you before. I just wanted to be here just so that we do realize that our enrollment is down, and I know I've mentioned it every work session the last couple of years.
And you need to, over and over and over and over and over.
Okay, so our projection for the 2022-2023 school year, we're anticipating that our enrollment will be 23,425 students, and our average daily attendance at 21,404. For 2022, this is our actual enrollment that we have of 24,605, and our ADA of 19,531. And this is based at the end of the 6 weeks. Of course, these numbers right here for ADA do not reflect the ADA adjustment approved by the commissioner, okay? So, I would like to remind you that for 21-22 school year, our average daily attendance that we budgeted on was 23,033. So our ADA is much lower than that. Of course, what does that mean? The district had a potential revenue loss, because of the average daily attendance.
23,033, is that the one?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes. Any other questions on this? So when doing our current revenue assumptions for the 22-23 school year, we are, of course, basing our preliminary property values. Of course, we had a 4.89% increase. We are projecting a ADA of $21,404 for the 22-23 school year. We will be applying a total of 17 Tier 2 pennies, which includes this year again, we are going to implement the disaster pennies into our tax rate because due to Winter Storm Uri, that happened back in February 13th through the 17th of 2021. So we'll be using that option that we have of using the disaster pennies. Legal counsel has been informed for input on the resolution and the opinion letter. And that's something that when we adopt a tax rate, that will come for board approval also, okay? The M&O tax rate for the, would be at 0.9746 with an INS rate of 0.2954 for the total tax rate of $1.27. And we are anticipating a 98% collection rate, okay? The ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 allotments are not part of this revenue estimate. That's a separate grant, and those are monies that began this the beginning of the school year, and that will continue for another 2 years. One of the ESSERs, and the other one ends at in 23. Just a full disclosure, these are only tentative numbers. We still need the actual certified property values, and once we get the actual compressed rate from TEA, we'll include the 17 cents, and that'll provide us the actual tax rate for M&O. Okay. Any questions on this? If not, on the next page, on page 7, this is our general fund, and of course the revenues at this point, we're only concentrating on the general fund. So what we see here, we see the budget plan for 21-22, that is what we approved last year. We have preliminary actuals for 21-22 and our plan for 22-23 school year. We have our average daily attendance of what we approved and we planned for was at 23,033, and then for preliminary actuals is 20,720. This number right here is already adjusted for the ADA adjustment that TEA provided. Okay, then for 22-23, we have 21,404 projected average daily attendance. Okay, based on that and our property values and our ADA and the special POPs, we are anticipating for, and I'm gonna concentrate on the state revenues, okay? Based on the 23,033, we anticipated we were going to generate $242 million in state revenues. Based with the adjusted ADA, that brought it up slightly a little bit higher than what our actual ADA was, we are anticipating a $219 million state aid. There's a reduction there of about $23 million. Okay, now projections for next year, we are projecting that on the 21,404 average daily attendance, we are going to generate state revenues of about $222 million. Okay, that compared to what we approved last year is at about $20 million shortfall. Okay, just so we can keep that in mind. Therefore, for 21-22, we anticipated total total revenues of $297 million, and we anticipate that our preliminary actions is going to be 279, and our projection for next year is $286 million. That is our projection.
And the shortfall that you were talking about, is it based on the 297 million minus the 279, or over here? On the 286. That's it. We have the 222. And I'm talking the one on when it comes to the state revenues? Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, the 242 that we originally budgeted for compared to what we're projecting next year.
Which is the
222.
This year's shortfall is the difference between the 242
and the
million
222.
And this year's actual 219.
219.
Okay.
There's a shortfall of about $23 million.
23 million.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
And that's the one you said that with hopefully the SATA, it can come up maybe 8 million.
8 million.
Yes. Yeah,
Maybe.
Yes, maybe.
Maybe.
It just depends on the SATA numbers, how they come up.
So then we're looking at a shortfall of 15 million, más o menos.
Más o menos. That's what we're hoping. So overall, we, when comparing our projected budget to the one that we approved back in last year for this year, we still have a shortfall of, and I wrote it down somewhere.
Which one?
The 297 versus the 286.
Oh, I didn't do that one. I
Yeah,
did the
that's about $11 million shortfall.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I looked it up.
The final amount, we will know when we close out this year, which would be in August.
We actually would not get
Yes.
the actual numbers from TEA probably in early September.
Early September.
We do our preliminary, the numbers, but TEA doesn't actually close. As a matter of fact, right now they're basically closing the 2021 school year. They're like a few months.
So we'll know
Behind.
what that actual amount is based on any other money that we saved. For example, positions that we did not renew, any other money that was budgeted that we saved. We will know what this final bottom line is.
From the 15.
Any other questions on this page?
No, just that it's hard because we won't know, but we know, so,
It is.
like, we know it's gonna be, so. That's the reason why I said you have to mention it over and over and over
Yes,
again, even though.
yes, and then.
Even though some eyes went,
Yes,
but
well-
that's why I'm saying, I think that it's important that we be upfront. It's important that we look to see where we are as a district and that we look at things very carefully because it's not business as usual.
And so that's this year, but in projecting next year, 22, 23, you see the difference there between the 242, and yes, that was what we had budgeted for this year, but when you look at, even for this year, that we were expecting a state revenue of 242 million, and as we project next year's, even though we're using the adjusted ADA, it is still 20 million less.
Yes.
And that's what I had figured,
Yes.
the 18 million, yeah.
Comparing the 242 million with next year's projected revenue on the state, right? Because we're not talking about federal or local, we're just talking about state. It's still 20 million less.
Less. And we're going to get less federal money because it's based on the number of kids. And so if you have less kids, you're going to have less at risk, you're going to have less low socioeconomic, you're going to have less of everything.
Yes, ma'am.
Because our kids are
Are
everything, they're,
Yes.
yeah.
Any other questions on this?
Which is why when we get to the proposed cost savings measures, we really need to pay attention to those recommendations. And we need to, as an administration, we need to really start working on those also.
If we move on to the next page, on page 8, this, once again, I want to say, this is a preliminary state budget, and we did it to the lowest level, to the highest level that we could to make it, to do a comparison. So here is the general fund, a preliminary. If we see, and I will address you to the total column, we have a total revenues of $286 million, which is the same number that we saw on the previous page, okay? And this one is broken down by food service, Kate, State Com, bilingual, athletics, special ed, early ed, CCMR, and the general fund as a whole. So we have a total of $286 million in revenues. We did a preliminary budget. This still needs a lot of, we're still working on it. We do have what the campuses and the departments budgeted in the categories. And as a district, I mean, we know when almost 80% of your budget is salaries. That is something that we are working together with human resources, and we're evaluating to make sure that all the positions that we need are there, and the ones that were set to be closed are closed. And that's a lot of cleaning up that we need to do on that one, to review all of our data to ensure. So based on this preliminary numbers, we of course we had $286 million in revenues. Our expenditures, we are projecting right now of about $295 million, giving us an overage of $9.7 million overage in the general fund. It's on page 8, and it's the column total, okay? Even though we're saying there that we're short only $9.7 million, I want to remind you the statement that it says approximate cost of positions that were moved to ESSER funding of about approximately $27 million.
And the ESSER money is only going to last till 23, 24, right?
Correct.
So then,
So those will eventually come back to the 199.
yeah.
That is
Which is-
something that,
yeah.
look, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Which is why our evaluating positions at central office, we need to aggressively do that this year, next year, and for 23, 24. And we need to continue to look at those positions and only replace those that are very critical, aside from other cost savings measures. But we do need to look at our staffing very, very critically. We cannot replace every position that retires or resigns at central office. We need to be very careful with those positions that we do replace.
And I know as a total it's 9.7. Each fund, for example, food service, Kate, Staycom, bilingual, those funds will have to balance themselves. So whatever, for example, on the state comp, they're short 646. They need to work within their budget and make necessary adjustments
They need to balance.
They
to
cannot be
balance.
short.
Right.
No,
Right,
they need to,
cannot be
that's what we're
short.
saying.
Correct.
They have to, they're gonna balance out food service, CTE, state comp,
Bilingual.
bilingual. They have to balance their
Balance out.
accounts.
I do want to point out that our special ed program, their revenues that they're required to spend directly on the special ed service is $11.2 million. Their total expenditures are $22,800,000. So 199 ends up supplementing them by $11 million, giving them back.
And that's an account that we've always
And it's, yes.
gone over because of the staffing that is required
Correct.
to address the number of kids that we have and the fact that the state does not fund all our needs in special education. And that has been a long time
And it's
issue.
And it's not something just to LJISD.
It's true.
It's almost statewide, I know. So,
Athletics is another area that we have always funded. That has the revenues. We've always, what's the word? Supplemented that account. And this year projections are 3.8 million.
one of the other ones that it's a new funding, the early education allotment. We're projecting that we're going to receive $4.6 million, and their total expenditures is 7.4. Most of this is the staffing for the early childhood, the pre-K3 that are being charged to that funding source.
We just started and we're already over.
Correct.
Wow.
So,
And we've we've made the decision to offer the pre-K3 program just to meet that need in our community and to get our kids enrolled in our campuses. But yes, you can see there the salaries. And is it just pre-K3? Or is it pre-K4 too?
Pre-K3, reading specialists.
Oh, there's some others
there's
there.
some other positions.
So maybe what we need to do is do a breakdown,
Okay.
right? So we can see how many are pre-K3.
We had already addressed that issue and we're back to it, like with the reading specialists.
Any other questions on this?
Just concerns, no questions.
And we'll continue to work on it, and hopefully when we bring it back, it'll look better, but
that's something that
but yes, we are concerned also because, of course, the decrease in enrollment is less revenue, and we need to look seriously at cost savings measures.
If we move on to page 9, There's some additional budget notes. Of course, we have to, adopt our budget before June 30th. But since we will not be receiving our certified property values until late July, our tax rate would have to be adopted in sometime in August before the timeline that we have. So in August, we'll reconvene and we'll bring in the actual tax rate adoption.
No,
We
you'll say
approve the-
you'll reconvene and you'll have to approve the tax rate.
I said we.
You're trying to be nice.
Any other questions? I know I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but
No, this is
That's what-
reality.
this
This
is
is where we
reality.
stand, and this is what we have to look at. I mean, that's our responsibility as board members.
okay. Next, we will be discussing salary increases, and Ms. Ayala will be presenting.
Good evening, everyone, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Sines. Before we begin with reviewing salary increases, in your binder on one of the pockets, you have a copy of the staffing allocations. These have already been reviewed at work session 1 and work session 2. Just wanted to give you a final draft that we're going to be taking to the board on May 11th for your approval. There is only one change that I would like to indicate. Initially, we had made a recommendation to decrease the number of police officers to 50 instead of what we have right now at 54. And we are going to go ahead and remain with 54 officers within our district. So that is the only change that we have. Are there any questions on the staffing allocation?
It's too fast for us to give you feedback right now, even though we've already looked at them, but it's been a while.
Is there a possibility that we could go for approval on May the 25th?
We could do it
That
for
way-
May the
that way
25th.
on the the next budget work session, we'll allow more time for discussion on it?
Yes, we can bring it
okay.
back.
We'll
Yeah.
we'll make that
Okay.
note to bring it back for the May 25th board meeting.
Okay.
Because, okay.
And
that's-
we'll discuss more.
We can
At
take
that-
feedback at the May 18th work session if you'd like, for recommendations or any questions that you may have on it. And again, this is all the same that we had reviewed at work session 1 and work session 2. And this is just a finalized draft that I am presenting to you. Okay, if we could take a look at slide 12 in your packet. This just shows information as far as where we as a district stand in regards to teacher salaries. This is information that we had shared before. Currently, our new teacher salary begins at $52,150, which is within the mid-range of the region in our area. And just some updated information, IDEA will be starting their teachers at $54,000 for the 22-23 school year. Previously, we had shared that they were going to be beginning their teachers at $53,000, but updated information that we have received is that they are starting at $54,000.
I'm just so concerned about the teacher shortage and the possibility of their test changing in lieu of that PPR and having to do, videotape themselves and then, it costing $200 to get certified.
To get
and
certified.
It's just, I'm just so concerned about that. I don't know how.
And it's definitely not good news that this is coming about at a time when there's a teacher shortage and yet certification process is being more stringent in Texas.
I'm very worried.
And we
about
do
that.
want to have quality teachers,
We need
in
them.
our district, and we understand the change, but I just don't feel that this is the right time to make that change because the teacher shortage is something that is not only, in our area, it's not only in our state, it is something that is happening nationwide, unfortunately. So
Well,
yes,
and with that, those news of that test, anyone that's eligible to retire, they're going to retire.
They're going to
I mean, they had already talked about it and planned it, but now this just does it.
Yes, so we are concerned also when it comes to teachers and making sure that we are appropriately staffed for the upcoming year. But because of that, we want to make sure that we remain competitive. So
I
that,
want to remain competitive. I want to be number one.
so we want to work towards being number one. So we are bringing to the board a recommendation of beginning teachers at $54,000 for the 22-23 school year. This would be an increase of about $1,500 per teacher with a few adjustments. So you see that on slide 13. And this is for teachers, librarians, and nurses.
I just think that as a board, and I implore with my colleagues that we look at other areas where we're going to have to cut, because we really have to attract the very best teachers that we can attract, because our kids need the very best teachers, and we need to keep them also. And something's got to give. That's just the way it is.
Yes.
But I do want to be number one or at the top when it comes to teacher salaries.
Yes. I don't know if it's something that we can do immediately, but it's most definitely something that we're going to be working towards. If you continue on to page 14, making that change to beginning teacher salary at $54,000 we do have a proposed cost increase of $2,981,121. Right now, our current salaries for teachers are $116,911,482. And again, this is for teachers, nurses, and librarians. So by making this increase to $54,000, we would add an additional $2.9 million to those costs.
To the $116 million.
Yes, ma'am.
Because it would be first-year teachers at $54,000, but it would also have an increase about $1,500 for all other teachers.
Yes, you're correct, Dr. Sines.
And nurses and librarians.
Yes. So if we move on to page 15, as we had done in previous years, and because we are experiencing a budget shortfall and we see a continued decrease in student enrollment since 2015, the only increase that we are recommending is for teachers, nurses, and librarians right now. For all other staff, we are going to be doing a retention stipend for the 2022-2023 school year. That is something that our board approved, and we thank you for that. That was approved on April the 13th. And again, there will be two payment distributions, one done in August and another one in August and another one in December. This is going to be a one-time cost that we are going to be taking from ESSER funds at a total of $10.5 million.
Ms. Ayala, could you see how much it would be more, or Mr. Trevino, if we would start at 55? I'm just afraid that neighboring districts, just like we know that IDEA will start at 54, that they would say, listen to our work session and say, well, let's do 54.5.
Absolutely, we can bring that recommendation. We can bring those numbers for their next work session. Beginning teachers, librarians, and nurses at 55,000. Yes, ma'am.
Are there any other questions on what we're proposing, which is the teacher increase, as we explained, and we'll definitely bring back to 54.5, and we can bring 55 also, but for all other staff, this retention stipend.
So just to be clear, we are not making a recommendation to increase salaries for all other staff at this time because of the budget shortfall. It would only be an increase to teachers, librarians, and nurses. And we would have the retention stipend available for all of our other staff that will be returning.
Well, actually, with the cost of living right now, I mean, I personally think that we should do it all over. I mean, not just on the teachers. Yes, I understand that point. and we understand compared to what we've seen in the area. But we have to also look at the rest of the employees. Because we all know that the cost of living right now, it's pretty high.
Well, auxiliary and classified, their
So-
pay is not compared to admin.
Yeah, so I do believe that there's areas that we can actually, really look at. And maybe we need to change some of those areas. Not just what we're looking at here right now, but we also have to see some positions that maybe there's no need to have. There's an overall that I feel we're actually missing. Right now, the economy, we all know it's real high. So we have to look at everybody. And yes, I agree, the shortage of teachers, we really need to look into that. So to me, 55 will be the starting point. Because as I just heard right now, with all these exams that are going on, it's gonna make it very hard for everybody. Okay? And we depend on them in order for them to bring our kids back. But we also need the bus driver, we also need the custodian. And we have to take into consideration, again, the cost of living right now, it's very high. And it's not gonna get any better. So, yes, we have this budget meetings, but I feel like we're missing something. We're just not looking at the whole picture. And what I mean about that, there's, when we keep on creating positions, that we need to stop all of that. We actually need to see how we can move people around and help out in other areas. I didn't want to really get into this, but by me looking at the chart, I see that, we have so many directors, supervisors, but a lot of them, they need to go in and help, in order to better all of this. So to me, it will be looking at the whole area, not just teachers, not just mechanics. It's like overlooking everything and see if we can come back with a better plan. This is the way I feel. I don't know how the rest of them feel, but we can't leave anybody short on this. Again, the cost of living it's increasing.
Well, this would not be the time to leave people out, but again, I'm gonna make my statement. We've gotta look at something, and we've gotta be together when we look at something, and we've gotta cut some areas. And unless we do that, if we, I'm with you in terms of supporting that everybody needs an increase. Everybody's experiencing the high costs, the high interest rates, the high mortgage rates, everything that's going up that we hear about every single day. And in turn, they're also having to do the very best job that they can, regardless of what position they have. So I'm with you 150%, but something has to give, and we have to be together in making some changes. And unless we're willing to do that, we won't be able, with a $20 million shortfall, we won't be able to do it. We can't do it if we don't change things. That's my whole point.
So
But
with
that
that,
I'm with you, I'm with you 150%. Everybody's worked really, really hard, and everybody's given their very best. We may have a few exceptions, but that's why we have all the administrators to address those people who haven't. But it cannot be business as usual, guys. I don't know how else to say it.
So with that said, let's go on to cost savings measures. And some of these measures that we're going to talk about, we understand that they did not happen this year, but that doesn't mean that we cannot continue to look at them, especially the one on the school consolidations. And so, yes, we know that we did not do that, but we need to continue to look at that. But I'll let Mr. Trevino talk about all of the different cost savings measures that are on the list.
Thank you, Judge. Thanks. Okay, the proposed cost savings measures and Dr. Science mentioned earlier, that we're not going to be creating additional positions. They will not be added to central office, and positions that are vacated due to retirement or resignation will be closely evaluated to fill only the most critical.
And that's the reason why I said that those positions that you all need to improve are budgeting, purchasing, all that department, that we look at people who have those backgrounds that could help in those areas. And that they be assigned to do that, and that it doesn't mean adding more people to central office.
And if I may, I just want to add that after every board meeting, we as a cabinet meet to review all of the resignations and retirements to determine, is this a position that we're going to be opening, yes or no? And so, of course, we open positions for teachers, for bus drivers, for custodians, and so forth. But other staff that is retiring and resigning, we look at a staffing allocation. What have we proposed previously that has not been closed? And then those positions are no longer opened. And we're also looking at positions that we are recommending to close for the upcoming year to determine, do we have to open them or not? So this is one of the cost-saving measures that we are currently implementing.
The next item is that we will not be having any out-of-region travel for central office staff out of the general fund. We are not restricting all of it because there are some grants that do require for staff members to attend certain conferences or workshops. Of course, we are also, and we talked before about sale of district-owned properties. There is an agenda item for approval, authorization to proceed with the sale of some properties at the next board meeting. We will continue to evaluate and recommend consolidation of schools with less than 400 students beyond 22-23. We will be performing a cost analysis when you combine schools. I mean, we may have one school that may have only a teacher with 10 first graders, but when you combine it with another school, then there might be enough students to make it a 22-1. So there'll be less teachers that may not need to be hired in order for that one. So that's something that we're going to be looking at and trying to proceed and consolidate some schools. We also going to evaluate our professional and contracted services to ensure that those services that we are contracting out are services that are actually in need for us, for the district to continue operations. We'll continue to evaluate the district's insurance program, including employee contributions. Okay, so that's something that we'll be looking at. We'll be looking also some ways that we can improve our savings in that area. We will also evaluate bus routes for possible fuel and freight cost savings there. Try to combine some routes and and hopefully there'll be some savings there. We will continue to evaluate ESSER funds to possibly reclassify staffing costs in 23-24. So the additional ESSER monies for one additional year. We will evaluate the clinic costs, possibly change the hours of operations so that our employees can have access to it after school and so forth, maybe extending them 2 days out of the week, an additional hour or so at night, still keeping it within the same cost that we're covering, not to incur additional costs, just keeping it within the same cost. And as we continue working on the budget, I mean, there's maybe other initiatives that we will be looking at and any other recommendations that we may have.
I know that HR is working with General Counsel on re-looking at our staffing at central office, all positions, not just professional, but also auxiliary and clerical, and working out on how we can be more efficient with staffing. And so we're currently looking at that possibility. So to your comment, Ms. Hernandez, we need to look more and we need to identify some positions that maybe we can, I guess, transfer to schools when needed. If they have the criteria, that's something that we're looking at also.
I know when I worked at Region 1, we had a secretarial pool instead of everyone having an individual secretary. We had a secretarial pool, and they were all housed right outside our offices, and whoever was free, we would just put it in a basket, and whoever finished whatever task they were working on. I know the secretaries will probably hate me for this, but it was very cost efficient, and they would pick up that assignment. And so we had 4 secretaries that were pumping out work all the time. And we didn't each have our own secretary when I worked as a migrant consultant. And I mean, there's a lot of things that can be looked at and be done a little differently.
Mm-hmm.
All in the name of our employees, so that we can consider giving everybody a raise.
Any other comments or suggestions in this area? And we move on. The next item on the agenda is the time equivalency program, and Mr. Munoz will be presenting.
Good afternoon, everyone. This item is in response to a request that was made on the April 27th board meeting in regards to whether we had surveyed our teachers when under consideration of the time equivalency program. So some legal considerations that we had to take into consideration when it came to the use of our calendar days is the Texas Education Code 21.401 that you can see there on slide 22. And what it basically says that teachers are required to work 187 days, right? So within our teachers' contracts, the minimum amount of work that they need to provide is 187 days. Now, as a district, our district has always recognized the importance of professional development, right? And I think that was the original intent of the TEP program, to allow our teachers the flexibility to attend or to provide them with at least 2 days in which they could attend professional development at their discretion, right? And to meet the needs that they might have personally.
And those 2 TEP days would be part of the 187 that they are required to work.
Correct, understand. So within that 187 workday requirement, right? We didn't want to burden teachers with having them go and attend professional development beyond those 187. So as a consideration to them, many years ago, district administration, with the approval of Board of Trustees, established the time equivalency program. So on page 24, slide 24, we see the way the program was designed, right? So LJISD employs teachers on a 10th-month contract. Due to the Texas Education Code 21.401, teachers, of course, must provide a minimum of 107 days of service. So in our district, the TEP program allows employees to use 2 of their 187 days to attend professional development sessions at their discretion. Now that means that for employees that work on a 187-day contract, employees work 185 days that are set up within our calendar. And then they substitute 2 professional days to cover those additional 2 days, right? And that is at their discretion. They can attend those TEP sessions in the summer or on Saturdays. Now, the 2 days that were designated as TEP are the 2 days preceding the Thanksgiving holidays. That gives the opportunity to our employees to take that whole week off as vacation. So the implication of us discontinuing this program is what you see there on slide 25. Right? And it says, if our district was to do away with the time equivalency program, employees would then need to work the 187 days. The 2 TEP days that we currently have scheduled would then be scheduled as work days, whether these were to be in-service days, planning days, or instructional days, right? That, of course, would increase the instructional minutes. So in response to the request that we go back and we poll or survey our teachers, we did present some calendar options to our teachers for them to consider. On slide 26, you see that calendar that was initially approved by the staff, right? And you see that within that calendar, we do have the November 21st and 22nd days coded as TEP days, right? The start date would be August the 8th. The TEP days would be November 21st and 22nd. And then the teacher end date would be May 29th. And if you were to count all those workdays, it would of course tally up to 185. And then the 2 they would substitute at their discretion. So to give them options in the event that we were to discontinue TEP, the calendar committee met, and then they made these considerations or options. On slide 27, you see the option in which we would just do away with the TEP program. However, to make up those 2 additional work days, our teachers would then have to come in on August the 4th, right? And they would work on August the 4th and 5th, and then that would tally up to the 187. As an additional option, so that we do not interrupt the start time, they came up with option 3, which was the teacher's start date would be on August the 8th. There would be no TEP days. However, the Christmas break would then have to be adjusted, and then they would have 2 less days to their Christmas break. And the end date would continue to be May 29th, right? So our teachers were surveyed. We sent out that survey last week. As of this late yesterday, we had 1,309 respondents. 85% of those that responded chose to keep the TEP requirement. Now, they were given the option to respond to the scenario in which the district was to choose to discontinue it. And as you see there in that last option, 74% of the respondents chose to add those additional 2 work days at the start of the year, right? However, at this point in time, 85% of the staff that have already replied to that survey are asking that we keep it.
I would like to know how much money we're spending for training that is being offered for TEP.
Yes, ma'am.
Because the other thing that was happening, even when I was here, that was that sometimes people just attend, and it's not really in their area. And a lot of money is being spent in the summer for training, very good trainings, but not everyone goes to their area. Not all principals assign teachers training that will help them grow in an area of need or area of deficiency. And so I would like to know how much money we're spending for all the TEP trainers, all the staff development that is being provided for TEP.
Sure.
It would be all our staff development though, because people pick and choose from all the training that is provided, which is going to be for TEP. So it would be the cost of all staff development that we do.
So the selection of their staff development is it monitored by the principal, or like who?
Yes.
Recommendations are made. I know that in planning for our professional development calendar, at around November, the middle of the school year, and Ms. Cynthia Salinas, our professional development director, does survey all of the staff, and she does a needs assessment, and she asks them, what are the type of trainings that you would like to attend or need for your assignment? And once she brings that together, then she presents it to our directors, executive directors, and says, can we provide and facilitate these trainings to our staff? And that's how we go about putting together our staff development calendar.
And we do provide a lot, and I know in the past we were spending $2 million on staff development. Just because of our
district
discussion.
is very generous in
Yes.
providing professional development to our staff.
That's why I'm asking. We just said that there's other areas, and so, you know.
In other districts, teachers, professionals do need to go out of the district to Region 1 state conferences.
And
They
be
enroll
there.
in university classes too, for continuing education courses. I know that one of the considerations or requests that came out of our survey was from our paraprofessional clerical staff. They did ask that we revisit our catalog and that we look for trainings that were more aligned to their areas of assignment. So Dr. Science did task the cabinet, every assistant superintendent in their department to start looking at offering additional courses or training sessions that were more aligned to their areas of assignment and need. Now, as a principal, one of the things that we do ask for principals is that when they're having their end of year conferences, that they look at the teachers' areas of refinement, areas of need, and that they recommend trainings that are aligned to those areas of concern. Right?
But we also know that it doesn't happen with every principal.
Correct.
And I was going to say, when I was a teacher here, my previous principal used to do that with every
Yeah.
So I just
It- it
And we
assume
do
all
have,
principals
yes,
did
we
that.
do have most of our principals that are very
At least in
good about
elementary.
assigning
Yeah.
trainings, but like you say, there might be some that don't do as good a job, but most of our principals are very good about assigning the TEP days for their staff. And some of them make certain trainings required, certain trainings that we offer are required for specific grade levels. So we do have a lot of principals, and I want to say most of our principals do a good job of assigning the TEP credit. But we will bring definitely the cost of our staff development, but like I said, it would be all our staff development because we don't have any that are designated as staff development for TEP. Teachers pick and choose from all of the trainings that are offered, and principals pick and choose from all the trainings that are offered, let's say in the summer or in the fall semester, to assign their teachers.
That is correct.
So there are not any that are just designated as TEP trainings.
One of the things that Ms. Salinas does review when teachers are submitting their certifications of trainings, right? Because since it involves funds and money, she's very careful in making sure that she's giving credit for trainings and not meetings, right? So like Dr. Sainz says, it's at their discretion. Some are recommended, some are mandatory in the sense that they say, you know, you have this area of need, this is a training that I'm recommending that you attend. But any training or any certification of a training that they're submitting has to be reviewed and approved by the principal, and then Ms. Salinas reviews it as well.
I think, and this year we got a little better about addressing it because we brought it here at a board meeting on looking at staff development that was critical, right? Because then we get into, we don't want to revert back to, well, we encourage you to attend when we're telling the teacher, you have to attend. And this is where we continue with the burned out of teachers. So we need to continue still dialoguing with our administration and saying, don't put that extra. We want to create quality teachers and great teachers, but we don't want burned out teachers.
And at the state level, there is a clearinghouse of trainings that are mandatory, right, that we provide our staff. Some are mandatory, some are optional, and some are recommended, right? And those, of course, become part of our course catalog.
And anything that you add, it's going to add to the amount of money that we spend.
Correct.
So we try to respond to that need that those clerical staff asked, but as you add, you have to pay for those trainers.
Right.
And I mean.
And it just depends, right? Because there's some trainings that most of the trainings are done in-house or are done in-house by our staff.
But we will look, Dr.
And so we'll
Benavides,
look
of
at
course, as a consideration to the concern that we have with the budget,
Yeah.
right? That we
Yeah.
trim to the most essential, the ones that we know garner the most interest and are aligned to the goals that we have for our curriculum and the delivery of instruction. And that we trim any of those that we can do away with, right? Because of course we want to make reassign those funds to fill some of those needs that we're having due to the shortfall that we're when it comes to the state and federal funding.
I would like to ask though, because we did survey the staff and the majority wants to keep the TEP credit, can we bring our calendar for approval? It's already been approved?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so can
the
we bring our
calendar-
calendar for approval, which would be the option one?
Correct.
At the next board meeting, so that we do not delay the approval of our calendar?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
if they have already voiced their preference, definitely.
Okay, but we'll
thank you.
definitely bring the cost of our staff development.
I think that with everything, going back to TEP, it's all about, my favorite word, communication. We have a lot of new teachers and even, like how did TEP originate? Is it mandatory? The 187 days, this is something by law that we need to. whether we take the 2 days away, you still have to work 187 plus an additional 2 because we're not going to provide TEP days. I mean, it's all how we talk to our staff. It's so important that we just continue having those dialogues.
And
like
yeah,
we are
and
right
with
now.
those explanations and just talking about it, our teachers confirmed that they do like having the 2 TEP days, and they do like having the option of working with their principal to select the training. But it was good discussions that we had with principals, with DEIC, and then it was good to hear from teachers on the survey. And we'll continue to keep the survey open just to see how many more teachers respond and what they say. Any other questions on any of the items?
That's it. That was the last item on the agenda, the
Yes.
time equivalency program, because we
Yes.
covered the discussion on the corrective action. So are there any other comments, any other requests from the board, or any? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Ms. Ochoa. Is there a second? Second by Dr. Cantu. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, and meeting is adjourned at 7:10.